2022 has been a year of a lot of self-work, or as I like to say, hella self-work. And it's been a lot. It's been a lot to the point where I'm like, yo, I think it's time to pour into you so you can be able to pour into others. And so for the next couple of weeks, I'm going to be pouring into myself so I can pour more into you guys with new content, a bunch of new things that are coming up, and explaining what it is I've been doing on the side and on the DL without most people knowing about it, including my close friends. So for the next couple of weeks until July 10th or July 5th, 3rd, and then coming back with July 5th, 10th with the new episodes, we're doing rewinds, and I'm rewinding some of our most popular episodes and ones that I really feel like kind of set up what I'm going to be explaining on July 10th. So I hope you enjoy these episodes because they're some of my favorites and they're some of our listeners' favorites too. Enjoy. You're listening to the Hella Well with Danielle show, a podcast taking women of color on a journey exploring all things wellness and travel related. We're all about showing you how to put on your oxygen mask first and creating lasting self-care habits that will free you to travel the world and live the life you truly desire, and not one you have to fake loving. I'm your host, Danielle Washington. Now let's buckle up and start this journey. Hello, 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 and welcome to another episode of the Hella Well with Danielle podcast. I'm your host, Danielle Washington, and my birthday is over. It kind of sucks. I'm like, my birthday is over, and people are like, what did you do for your birthday? Did you go somewhere? Did you hang out? Did you have a party? I'm like, no, I took care of me. I focused in on self-care, and I did what self-care means to me. And if you listened to last week's podcast, I was talking about the difference between self-care and self-love. This week, I want to talk about the difference between self-care and self-work, because I think that's the bigger confusion. And I'll be the first one to admit, I didn't have it planned out. I didn't even know there was a difference. And I always thought, I was like, I'm doing self-care. I'm listening to all these things online and I'm doing everything they're saying to do, but yet I still feel not rested. I still feel restless, not recharged, and exhausted and overwhelmed, and it just wasn't working for me. And then I had to finally kind of come to the conclusion. I'm like, oh, wait, sis, you're not actually doing self-care. What you think is self-care is actually self-work. And so I wanted to follow up on this week's podcast and kind of break down the difference between self-work and self-care, because it makes a difference. And a lot of you probably are, once you listen to this, you're like, ah, dang, I've been doing self-work all this time and not self-care, and wondering why I feel like a hot mess. And now you'll know. So there is a difference between self-care, self-love, and self-work, and all three are important. But knowing the difference will change how you show up. So I'll kind of refresh. If you haven't listened to last week's podcast, I encourage you to listen to that about, the difference between self-care and self-love. But just on a premise, self-care was really about maintaining and nourishing your mind, body, and soul. And it's the way I like to think about it, it's like I'm a new plant mom. Bought a plant, took my parents on a road trip to near Hearst Castle, Cambria, Morro Bay, and I bought this plant. It's this pinstriped calathea, crazy difficult to kind of take care of, but I loved it. I'm like, it's pink and green stripes. I'm like, who doesn't want a plant that's pink and green stripes? Clearly, I'm probably an AK. Yes, I am. Shout out to my AKs. But I bought this plant and I'm excited. But when you're a plant mom, you have to worry about, making sure the plant has enough sun, making sure the plant is fertilized right, making sure it has enough water, making sure that, you're wiping the leaves and all these other things. And that's part of the nourishment of the plant. And that's taking care of it, refueling the plant. And I think the same thing we need in our own lives is we often need to recharge. We need to refuel. We cannot continue. And I say this over and over again, we cannot continue as a culture, as a collective, to continuously try to pour from an empty cup. When that cup is empty, if you have a literal cup of water or your favorite alcohol, think of a glass of wine, which is what I kind of wish I had right now. But if I had a glass of my favorite wine, which is Lincoln Colado, in Paso Robles. Shout out to them. But I've had a glass of my favorite wine and it was empty. I can't lick the glass enough to get enough nourishment from it. And that's the same with our energy. If we drive our energy and our mentality and just everything we're trying to do down to the level where you can't even lick it like it was a glass, why do we think that we can continue to pour and give at a level of 100 when we're really at a level point negative 12? And I just don't understand that. But as women of color, I think we've been trained that we can do it. We're super women. We can do it all. We can make water and wine appear and this magical energy appear because that's what we've been trained to do. And like I know that people think that our mothers, grandmothers, and great grandmothers would just had a different level capacity. And I'm like, that's not the case. They didn't have a different level capacity. And that's not that we're weaker because we can't do it all or we need to pause or we need to add in more self-care. It's that they didn't have a choice. If you were a black person or we'll stick with women. If we were black women in the middle of slavery, you didn't have a choice. Like, I think I need a self-care day. I'm not going in the fields. I wish someone would have. I wish they would have tried it. And I'm sure some people did try it to some degree, but most people knew that wasn't an option. It wasn't an option to say I needed a self-care day in the 50s and 60s during the civil rights era. It wasn't an option. The luxury we have and the difference we have from our ancestors is that we have more options. Now, are we taking the options? Are we really taking the opportunity to add self-care, self-work, and self-love into our lives? Oftentimes, no. We're doing it half-assed. We're not fully taking advantage of the opportunities that we have in our generation. And that's where I feel the difference. And so, because I had people tell me, like, oh, well, it was different back then. They could just take on more. And I'm like, no, they just didn't have a choice. And because when you don't have a choice, you probably really aren't complaining about it because, again, you don't have a choice. So, self care, again, is the maintenance. It's like a maintenance, it's the maintenance of your well being. The difference between self care and self work is the act of like becoming aware of your thoughts, your emotions, why you do the things you do so you can improve. And that's where I got self care and self work mixed up because I was spending a good portion of most of my 30s trying to do the self work and a good portion of my 40s too trying to do the self work. And like, even to the point where I'm like, I'm doing all this work, but I'm not seeing the difference. I'm like, yeah, I'm more aware of things. And the awareness, don't get me wrong, is hella good and it's important and it's needed. But the awareness without the action and the maintenance and the love kind of, it's like, great. I know a bunch of things from about, I don't know, baseball. Doesn't mean I'm going to go out and play. I know a bunch of things about, what it takes to be, because I watched Shark Tank to be a entrepreneur that's making all these different deals and pitching all things, but doesn't mean I'm going to do those things. You can have the awareness. How you act on it and how you incorporate it into your life makes a difference. And so I talk about self-care and self-work. I think also where there's a lot of confusion is with self-work. It's what people deem as self-care that most people think, oh, it's that uncomfortable part. It's that, it's the getting out of your comfort zone. It's that feeling that doesn't always feel good. And that's the self-work. And it doesn't mean that it's bad for you. It just sometimes when you're learning something new or you're changing a habit, it doesn't always feel good, but it doesn't mean that it's bad for you. And so a couple of examples of self-work I like to think about is like, so self-work, therapy, strong advocate for therapy. I hella love my therapist. My therapist is bomb. Yes, I could probably live without my therapist, but my therapist helps me become more aware of she helps me become aware of what's going on in my life so I can make the changes to improve my life to get to the level of life that I want to be living and not just surviving. I talk about this all the time. I ain't trying to survive. I have spent many years surviving. I spent many years in victim mode. I am done. It didn't work for me. It sure didn't feel good in my 20s. It sure the fuck didn't feel good in my 30s. And I kind of really don't want to be doing it in my 40s. I'm done with surviving. I'm done with feeling that I have to do things because this is what my grandmother did. This is what society says I need to do. This is what it says. Like I checked the box that I'm a Black woman, so I guess I need to live this way because that's what the government and Trump supporters and everyone else says that that's supposed to be my life. Nah, it's not that way. It doesn't have to be that way. I totally went on a tangent. Sometimes I just get riled up about certain things. But yes, so my therapist is mom. And therapy is a great form of self-work. And it's one that kind of just no-brainer, kind of figuring out that self-work, therapy, and it kind of go together. Reflecting, journaling. Journaling is a great way to do the self-work. And it's a great way to, ask yourself the hard questions that you kind of know you need to be asking or have the conversations, but you may not want to have with another person. So reflecting on, okay, where am I in my life? What are things that I can be doing to improve certain things? Why am I not keeping my promise to myself? Why am I saying yes when I know I hella don't want to say yes and I want to be saying no to this person? Why can't I keep my boundaries? Why do I feel like I am not worthy or I need to do all these things to feel worthy to feel worthy? So that's one of the parts of reflecting is a great way to kind of focus in on your self-care, or excuse me, on your self-work. Yes, I said it myself. Self-work. So reflection is a great form of self-work. Therapy is a great form of self-work. Even eating healthy is a great form of self-work. Because think about it. If you're eating healthy to, let's say, lower your blood pressure or something other medical issue, you're doing it because you've become aware of, if I do this, okay, this will help me improve my well-being. So you're doing it to improve your well-being, or you're trying to eat healthier. Like, okay, let me try to, become detox for a week or two and see if that helps me with my clarity in my mind. Does that help me with my energy? Does it improve my well-being? And helping you become aware of, oh, if I eat this, maybe I feel better. Maybe if I don't eat this, so I feel better. And doing the kind of the checks and balances to investigate. Because when you're doing the self-work, it starts with the awareness. It's figuring out, okay, it's like when you're at a mall, you have that little red thingy, whatever, and it's like, you are here because you can't figure out where you want to go unless you've actually figured out where you currently are. That's the first step in the self-work. But the second step in that is like the investigation. It's kind of knowing, okay, I'm here. Now what? What's going on? How do I feel? What's it going? What do I want to do? And doing that, internal reflection and investigating on, all the different things and identifying all these, where you are, where you want to be, what's holding you back, and what needs to change. So then you can then make the steps to redefine what you're doing and change habits that you need to do, and make the action behind that. And it kind of feel like it's what I called AIR. It's like, awareness, investigation, and redefining what you're doing. And it's the kind of this loop of what you're doing over and over and over it's part of your wellness program. That is wellness to me. That's a huge part of my self-work is like, okay, I'm here, but I kind of don't like it here. You know, it's not as warm as I thought it would be. And looking at my apartment, it's not as warm as I thought it would be. I wish I could see the moon. And low key, I really can't see the moon in my apartment. I really don't really like my upstairs neighbors who like to stomp as if they're in a stomping contest. Okay, what can I redefine? Well, I can redefine where I live. I can redefine my neighbors by, doing something evil towards them, which I probably never would do. But, I can do many different things. And it's kind of that, again, air figuring it out. And that's part of the self-work. So in terms of self-work, I kind of went on another tangent. I sometimes do that. I don't know why. Reflection, therapy, eating. Basically, it's anything that any It's an act of becoming aware of your thoughts and actions that could be focused in on your emotional, mental, or physical. And doing the self work can help in so many different ways. Doing the self work can help you have a deeper connection with yourself. Through my self work and, understanding things I like, learning about my inner child and how I speak to myself, learning that, oh, I need to reparent myself, learning that, oh, these things are triggers for me. It has helped me, and it has helped me increase my level of self-love. It has helped me find self-love, and develop a deeper connection with myself. It is also motivates me to focus more on self-care. When I'm doing the self-work, it helps me get to a point where I'm like, okay, I'm doing this work, and it's making me realize that, oh, in doing this work or just in living in life, I need more pauses in my life. And it still gets confusing. Like when I look at things like, okay, is asking for help self work or self care or self love? Well, yes, let's think about it this way. Asking for help is self love because, oh my God, I'm loving on myself to know that I'm worthy enough to ask for help when I need it. It's asking for help is self care. It's because it's recognizing that you need help to nourish yourself, is to maintain who you are and your well-being, that I can't do it all. So for me to do that, I need to ask for help so I can continue nourishing and maintaining my well-being. It's self-work. It's because you're becoming aware of the fact that you can't do it all. And it's things like that that kind of muddle the situation. And I get why self-care, self-love, and self-work are confusing, but I don't know. It's confusing, but there's also, I hoping through this podcast, you can clarify a little bit more. And so like more examples of what self-work is like, I talked about its reflection, talked about therapy, but it's also about learning new things about yourself. It's that awareness of, okay, what brings me joy? And for so many years, I've been here doing all this self work and, taking all these classes from all these people and, being in masterminds and coaching programs and online trainings and reading books. And I was like, I still don't know what brings me joy. And that was the frustrating part. I was like, I'm doing all this work, air quoting, but I don't know what brings me joy. And I wasn't learning new things about myself because I was so busy focused in on, well, what was wrong with me to get here in the first place? And again, I'm not saying it's bad to figure out what in the past has caused you to get to where you are currently that you may want to shift or adjust or increase. But when you're only focusing on that, sometimes you kind of forget to take care of yourself. But again, learning new things is another form of self-work. Questioning your beliefs, huge. Last couple of years, I've definitely been questioning like how I go about things and what I believe. And, I think my definition of success has definitely changed. My definition of what it means to be a Black woman in America has changed. My definition of failure has changed, because I've questioned my beliefs. I've questioned the beliefs of what is beauty over the years. I've questioned the belief of what is what is good hair. As I look at my natural hair, and as I was told as a child, like, oh, if it's not straight, it's not pretty. Your hair is nappy, or if your hair is natural, your hair looks like it's undone. And I've been able to question and change my beliefs that work best for me and where I am currently in my life. Uh, it's planning your future. It's dealing with struggles head on. Self work is living intentionally, and it's keeping your stress levels in check. Granted, keep your stress levels in check can still be self care, but it's also the awareness of it is the part that becomes self work. So I know this may be confusing. So, what is the difference, or how does self care differ a little bit more from self? How does self work differ from self care? So, I'm going to give you a couple examples to kind of hopefully help you figure this out. So think about it. I'm a Reiki master. Super excited. I actually just recently taught a Reiki class, and it was amazing. It was one of those things where I'm like, oh my God, I taught a Reiki class. And I love being able to help other people help other people. So we're going to take energy healing. So we're going to give a Reiki example. So self-care. Someone gets a Reiki treatment to just relax, because Reiki is a Japanese form of stress reduction and relaxation, and it relaxes your body so much to the point to where it helps you and it starts promoting healing. So that's the self-care part of it. If you're getting Reiki, using Reiki just to just relax and just chill, that's self-care. Now, if you wanted to use Reiki for self-work or some energy healing, think about it this way. So you're using this energy healing and Reiki healing to intentionally move energy, because Reiki, what it does is it takes the energy that is stuck and stagnant in our body, and it releases it. It releases, helps you release emotions and traumas that we don't even know that we're holding on to. That's self-work. That's doing the work that sometimes is uncomfortable to get to a better place to improve your life. Take it another way, perfect, really clear example is I want to read a book. It's a Friday evening. I've had a long week and I'm just freaking exhausted. I'm going to sit on my couch that I paid probably too much money for, but I love her. Sit on my couch, grab a glass of wine, read a book, and play some music and just chill, read something that I love that makes me laugh. That's self-care. It's nourishing my mind. It's letting myself rest. It's doing something I love. It's doing something that, nourishes me. It makes me feel good, and it's maintaining my peace of mind. The self-work of that is I'm cuddled up with that same book on my same, probably overpriced couch, same glass of wine. But when I said what I'm doing with that same book is I have notepads. I have highlighters, I have little tabs, and I'm reading the book and outlining the book, and I'm taking in notes of where there's life lessons in the book, things that I can add into my life or incorporate in my life, or something that was like, oh, this would be good to check out and research more or learn more about. And it's using that book as a life lesson to grow, to level up. That's the self work. And I hope that makes a difference, what the difference between self care and self work is. And the reality of it all, it does need to be a balance. I'm not saying, okay, so now that you know the difference between self care and self work, it needs to be a 50-50 balance. No, it's not. And let me be honest, it's probably never will be a 50-50 balance. Nothing in life is 50-50 balance. There is no work-life 50-50 balance. I don't know. I don't know anyone who has it. You may have a work-life balance of 20-70 or 20-80. I totally did the math wrong on that one, but 20-80. But there's no 50-50 split. It all depends on what's going on in your life. I mean, there may be at one point in time, but most of the time, it really depends on what's going on in your life. You use self-care to recharge in between the self-work. And you need the self-care between the self-work. The self-work can be hard. The self-work is when I tell people before I really started paying attention to the difference between self-care and self-work, was that I'm like, self-work ain't always easy. Self-work, no one said self-work was going to be, rainbows and butterflies. And what they were really saying is the self-work that you do to improve your life ain't always going to be rainbows and butterflies. The self-care, I can't. The self-care it can feel uncomfortable, especially if you're trying to set boundaries and, if that feels uncomfortable to you to put yourself first. Yeah, that self-care can feel uncomfortable. But most of the time when people say self-care is uncomfortable, they're really talking about the self-work. They're talking about the improvement. They're talking about breaking habits. They're talking about getting out of your comfort zone, putting you first, making yourself a priority. That's the self-work, and becoming aware and doing those actions are the things that people are saying that are uncomfortable. But I don't know. I also feel like self-care, if you're doing too much self-work, and that's where I found myself, it can become exhausting as not doing any self-care or self-work. I think we're in a time in our lives where there's so much about wellness, 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 hashtag self-care, hashtag self-love, that we're so busy doing, and becoming more aware and doing all this work that we're becoming exhausted just doing the self-work. And we're burning out on self-work. I was 100% in 2020 burning out on self-work, because I wasn't going anywhere. I wasn't traveling. I was like, well, I have all this time to take all these classes and be in all these groups and all these. I was in a coaching program, and then I didn't like that coaching program. I joined another coaching program, and then I joined this other coaching program, and I joined this life situation, and joined a group of masterminds, and it was just exhausting. I was tired. And I didn't understand why I was tired, because I'm like, well, I'm doing all this self-care, and why am I so tired, and why am I feeling so burnt out? And then I realized that, wait a second, you're going from course to course to course to course to course and not taking the time to integrate, not taking the time for self-care in between, not taking time to maintain my well-being in between the hard work of the self-work, in between the self-work that was pushing me to more to self-love, which was making me want to do more. But at the same time, sometimes you need to let yourself just integrate that stuff. And when I allowed myself the time to integrate all the things that I was learning and working on and improving, that's when the self-care came in more naturally. It became more automatic. That's when the self-love was flowing like a freaking river. But you gotta know what's right for you. What's right for me, the balance depended on the time frame of my life. It depended on me and just who I am. So what works for me may not work for you, but knowing that the difference between self-work, knowing the difference between self-work, self-care, and self-love allows you the choice to show up differently in your life, the choice to choose, oh, okay, I need to do a little bit more maintenance. Oh, maybe I need to do more, self-work, or, I just love me. And so finding those difference, and a great activity that I'd recommend thinking about doing is think about all the things you do for self-care, all the things that you are claiming as self-care, and investigate, become aware of what they are. Write them all down, write down everything you consider self-care, and then look at the intention behind it. Determine, are you actually doing any true self-care like every day? Are you doing something every day? Are you doing something at least once a week? Maybe once every 2 weeks? And if you're not, okay, what shifts do you need to make to find the right balance for you? And so when you're able to see and like list all the things, and like if I was doing this about a year or two ago, I would list all these things as self-care and realize that no, it wasn't self-care. Most of it was self-work. I had very little self-care in my life. And I was wondering why I was burnt out. I'm like, I'm on this whole new vibe. I'm doing all these things. I'm woosah and all these things. And yet I'm not feeling any better because I'm doing the self-work and I'm becoming more aware, but I wasn't doing the self-care. And when I was able to write down all the things that I thought that were self-care, recognize, okay, you know, 80% of this is actually self-work and only 20%, and it's not working for me in having this balance. So I needed to up my balance of self-care and refueling, recharging, and nourishing myself and maintaining my well-being, my mind, body, and soul. That's when I saw the difference. When I was able to find what my balance was the game changer in my well-being. And they're all important. They're all important. Self-love is important. Self-care is important. Self-work is important. But I need you to know that the key to all of this is finding your balance. And that's what I got for you this week. I hope this helps you, because I want to see you guys grow. Like, this year is almost over. As I get to another year in life, and I feel like I'm getting philosophical, as I've grown another year in life, I discovered in the last year, when I was able to discover the difference between self-care and self-work, and I discovered self-love. I won't lie. Last year is when I can really truly say, card carrying 100%, I love me. And it's not like I'm cool with me. I am so grounded in loving me and knowing my worth. Well, I loved myself before, but I didn't know my worth. And I couldn't see my worth. And that's because I was able to find the right balance for me between self-care and self-love. I have been able to increase my self-care to where I feel better. I wake up most days and I'm grateful. I'm happy. Things can go wrong in my life and I'm still rocking. Things are still good. I know Reiki has played a huge part in that. And I'm grateful for my journey with Reiki and to be able to understand what's the difference between my authentic self and my cultured self. And I don't need to do all this work. Me backing out and not joining a bunch of different groups and finally not being in what it feels like 12 different coaching programs. And I'm just like, okay, I've done the programs. I've learned something from many or most of them, maybe not all of them, but from many of them. Now let's integrate what I've learned and let's use the tools versus checking off the box and going to the next one. And so I'm grateful for lessons. I'm grateful for last year. I'm grateful for where I am and I'm grateful for where I'm going. And I just think things are getting better and better and better because I found my balance. And on that note, I will talk to you guys later. Ciao. Have a good one. Thanks for joining us this week on the Hello Well with Danielle show. Make sure to visit our website, hellowellwithdanielle.com, where you can subscribe to our show on iTunes, Spotify, and Amazon Music and never miss an episode. Also, you can follow us on social media at Hello Well with Danielle on Facebook and Instagram, and Hello Well Danny on Twitter. And if you hella love the show and got some good nuggets out of it, know that I'm not too proud to ask for you to please leave a rating or review on iTunes so that we can continue to expand our reach and help other women of color. Again, thanks so much for listening, and I hope to see you next week. Ciao.